All right, all you glorious gamers out there, welcome to the PlayersToo Podcast, the video game podcast for gamers like you, by gamers like you. You can find PlayersToo on all the social media, that's Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, the lot. You can also find our written content over at PlayersToo.com, that's PlayerStoo.com. And if you could take 5 seconds to give us 5 stars over on Apple Podcasts, that would really, really help us out. Again, it does a huge amount for the exposure of the show. Please, if you could take that 5 seconds, it would mean so much to us. And thank you so much to anyone that's already done that. You're an absolute legend. All right, and on with the show. My name is Mark Henderson. With me, as always, Mr. Lewis Camley. How's it going, Lewis?
It's going very well, Mark. Good to be here again. Good to be doing this.
Yeah, it does feel like quite a long time since we've done this. We kind of pretended that we were back last week, but in actual fact, we sort of kind of weren't. Yeah, so this is the first time we've recorded since I think it was December the 16th, if
Something
memory
like
serves.
that, yeah.
Middle of December anyway. So very good to be.
God, it's longer than I even realised. Yeah,
It's been a really long time.
God, it's been bliss.
Well, anyway, what have you been playing over the Christmas break, Lewis?
Yeah, a lot of time, not as much of it for gaming as I hoped, and
there never is.
Yeah, there never
bloody is.
So I
big dreams.
Oh, always
big dreams.
Always big dreams.
Reality is it never comes to fruition.
Yeah, it's this Christmas myth, isn't it?
Yeah. So it's not a holiday; it's just a series of obligations.
So I have very briefly jumped back into the Outer Worlds, which is going to be my main game that I'm focusing on just now. I've also done the unthinkable and finally began playing Final Fantasy VII.
Yes,
the original,
yes, he has.
the original game.
Come on.
As I said before, I got this for the Switch a wee while ago, and I had kind of committed to myself that I was going to start playing it over Christmas, which I have done. I had several very long train journeys, only slightly broken up by terrible railway service that we have in this country. So I got a fair bit of that played, and I'm really enjoying it. But again, I will be playing it bit by bit for months. Like it's not the game I'm dedicated to. It's the game I'm going to play like when I'm commuting and stuff. So I'll drip to you my thoughts on it.
But you are enjoying it.
I am enjoying it. Yep.
I was very concerned that you weren't going to enjoy it. I'm not going to lie to you.
There's things that I don't like about it, and there are definitely.
It's a very old game.
Yeah, design wise, it's got some aging issues, and also the Switch port. I don't know if other ports or whatever have had it, but it's got some quality of life improvements that are effectively cheats. But I'm not playing it for the total grand experience. I'm playing it to see what it's all about and see what the hype is that I've missed these past 20 odd years. So
20 odd years.
Yes. What was it? It came out in 1997 or something like that.
Yeah, I was just going to say it was definitely
so,
the 90s.
It's about 22, 23 years old. So yeah, I am enjoying it, and I will give you more thoughts in future. The main thing that I played, or that I want to talk about today really, was that on Christmas Eve, just 2 short hours before the end of Christmas Eve, I finally put an end to Death Stranding, Mark.
Nice one.
And
how did that go?
Well, it went extremely well.
Very good. I also have now, as of, I think it was the 2nd of January, have also finished Death Stranding. So we can now actually have a conversation about it,
yes,
which is nice.
Which I've been dying to have.
Yes. I'm just going to prefix this conversation. This won't be spoilery as such. There might be mild spoilers in this. We won't spoil any specifics, is what I will say. However, we are going to talk about the game here quite a bit. And if you are very, very sensitive to spoilers or just do not want to know anything about this game, I'll put a timestamp in the show notes. Just go and look at that. I'll try and make it a link. I might fuck that up. Please don't contact me if that doesn't work. But yeah, I'll put a timestamp in the show notes for the podcast, and if you don't want to hear anything about the game, then just go and click that, fast forward on to the next section, and it'll be all the usual stuff. So Lewis, thoughts?
Well, I loved it. I think I've kind of hinted at that and said that in bits and pieces over the last however many weeks that I've been playing it. It's not a perfect game by any stretch.
Good Lord, no.
It's got a lot of, well, it's got some issues, and its primary issue to me is how bonkers and off course the story goes as it wears on. But in terms of just my enjoyment of that game, which is the thing that we were kind of primed to not really enjoy, like it felt like all the critical discourse before the game dropped or as it dropped was like, it's not very fun to play, but you know, you might enjoy it for these reasons. I found it really enjoyable to play, moment to moment. I thought the mechanics blended together really well. I thought how the mechanics and the narrative paired up, particularly in the kind of middle section of the game, chapters 3 through 7 or whatever. That just works really well. Some of the set pieces that Hideo Kojima has made in this game, I just think are stunning. But on the flip side, I don't think it's a very difficult game. I don't think it really has any idea where it's going narratively, and it becomes quite problematic as it gets towards the end. Yeah, I don't know. Like, there's something about it that just stops me saying that it's like a really necessarily pinnacle game, although it probably is still my game of the year. But in terms of like that, particularly that middle section, I just thought this is just great. It's just a fantastic thing to be part of. What did you think?
Well, I have to say that when I first started playing it, the primary gameplay loop, which is literally deliver cargo, stay upright, and climb the odd cliff face with your ladders and whatever, I was very, very concerned that I wasn't going to like that. And if I didn't like that primary gameplay loop, which I didn't initially as well, by the way, because it kind of took me a wee minute to get a hang of it to a certain extent, because it is sort of unlike anything I'd ever played before. And initially I didn't like it, but actually very quickly that all started turning around, and it's been said in big websites and within the gaming space that getting to chapter 3, like the first 2 chapters, are very much your sort of tutorial, but in reality I spent 10 hours on those first 2 chapters. So I mean, it's kind of hard to say that to people, like, oh, you just need to get to chapter 3, because what you're really saying to someone there is, oh, you have to commit 10 hours to this before you will start enjoying it, which is what I'd committed to playing this game for various reasons, not least of which talking about it on this podcast. But it took a long time for me to think, oh, actually, this is really good. So I actually started off really not liking the primary gameplay loop, and then fully coming around. And in actual fact, it's probably the best part of the game for me, is literally just going from A to B and making a delivery. And the situations that it puts you in the world that Hideo Kojima has created around it, allows for very unique moments. And because of what has been called, quotes, the stranding mechanic, whereby other people's like old equipment and things like that appear in your game, that means your world is actually quite unique, and the way that you can travel around it using other people's equipment and adding your own as you go is entirely your own. And because of that, it manages to create a lot of, as I said, like very unique moments for the player in a way that I have never experienced before. And I found it really fascinating, to be honest, and really enjoyable to play through. There's a journey kind of near the end of the game where it doesn't matter what it is. Again, we won't spoil specifics, but it's basically a big long journey, right? And it's back across a whole area where you had been before. We were talking about it off air slightly, and you were saying that mission was just a bit like, oh, whatever. You just kind of drove around a mountain up the road that you'd built and away onto the next part of the mission. Whereas I decided to go as the crow flies, walking, traversing the whole map, going like over mountain ranges and stuff. And it was so great because we were going back to older parts of the map. You were like, oh, this is the bit of equipment that I left here 30 hours ago within the game, and I'm using this again. And I was like, oh, this is when I had to do this bit. Oh, I remember that. And it was weirdly nostalgic going back through the map and seeing all your old shit lying about. Again, eventually I got to a bit of road that I built, which is a mechanic that you can eventually use in the game. And then I was just like cruising up to the end of this level, and I was just like, this was great. Like I absolutely loved this part of the game. And as well, like, again, no spoilers about specifics, but the kind of last journey that you have to go on as well is just like such an incredibly beautiful moment. At that point, you're not given a map, I noticed, and it's just like, just go. And that's all it was, and that was just fucking great. Now, I put all the good stuff up front there. Okay, right? Okay. I put all the good stuff up front because this game has mad problems all over. Tell me them. Right? Lay them on me. Well, boss fights, right? I actually thought the boss fights in general were quite enjoyable. I don't really know what to say. Like, they were quite cool, basically. Like, they were just quite enjoyable to play through. They were all, for me, very easy, very straightforward. Incredibly straightforward. However, they did provide some good moments for the player as well, but they were incredibly straightforward. My main gripes about this game, right, are combat and stealth. Good grief. They were absolutely awful, both of them. The combat was so painfully sluggish and slow when you were doing melee attacks, and as well, like the gunplay, when eventually you get around to having like weapons and things like that, the guns are absolutely, they're not garbage against the enemies, like they are actually quite strong against the enemies, but the experience of shooting that gun feels numb, like you're not really in control of it. I just did not like it at all. I did not like any of the experience of any of the combat. Now, if you're going to make the combat in a game very difficult, and this game is not a combat-focused game, right, so it does have to be said, if you're getting into situations often where you are getting into combat, I would say that you're kind of not playing the game as it was intended to be played. I mean, you can play that way. I mean, of course you can play the game however you want, but if you're getting into situations where you are often in combat, I would say that in general, that's probably not what you've, quotes, supposed to be doing, you know? So, to counteract that, you would then think that the stealth was good, so that you could get through spaces and areas which were full of enemies confidently. But no, the stealth is absolutely awful. I don't know if it was just me, but I know that you had a similar experience where it was just like you went into an area, they pinged you.
So can I just clarify here? So you're talking about stealth when...
All of this just now, we're talking about stealth versus human enemies, not the BTs, which are the big gangly ghost-looking things that you'll see in all the trailers. This is all against human enemies. So the stealth, I found it near impossible to go through an area and not be detected at some point, which immediately devolves into you running as fast as you can in the opposite direction, whether or not that's the way you're supposed to be going or not, just to get away from them as quickly as possible. And I thought that was really, really, really disappointing from a Hideo Kojima game, because he'd done Metal Gear and it was so good at stealth.
When you consider that Metal Gear Solid 5 is incredible for both its stealth and its combat.
It's so good for that. That's like what makes it so good, is that, do you know what I mean? The story in that is by far the worst of maybe all the Metal Gears, but the gunplay and the combat and the stealthing around is so good, and I was just expecting more of that, because initially I thought, oh, maybe I'm not doing this right or whatever, and then I got to, as we were talking about that chapter 3, which kind of opens up the map a wee bit, then I actually done a stealth. I went and collected a package from an area which was kind of swarming with guys or whatever, and got the package away and no one saw me, and I was like, oh, obviously I've just not been stealthy enough. But no, as the game progressed, that was just blind luck. That's obviously what happened there, is that I just got lucky, because in every other situation I found it really difficult to stealth anyone, which meant that almost every encounter with a human enemy was a bad experience. It's not just like it was bad for Sam Porter in the game. It was a bad experience. It just wasn't good. Like, nothing was clicking, nothing felt good. The stealth didn't feel good when I was trying to get past them, and then when inevitably I was caught, like, the combat didn't feel good, and it was just like, So eventually, and I think you were the same, you just ended up taking massive detours to go around them, and I don't know, maybe that was the point, but I don't know, I just found all that very disappointing. Is any of that ringing true to you? Does that feel...
I think half of what you've just said is my experience, basically. I'll start with the stealth. The stealth is laughable. It's not in the game at all, really. Basically, you can crouch. There's occasionally long grass you can hide in, but the idea, I think, at the start of chapter 3, you're essentially confronted with a mule camp. It's like right in your direction. You can't possibly avoid it. It's still,
the mules being the human enemies.
It's still essentially teaching you what you're supposed to do about that. The idea that you could somehow get beyond them through stealth, to me, was just nonsense. Like, because of their pinger system, you're just found immediately. I found, like, I hated
which
that.
then forces you to move immediately. And then there was never, for me, anywhere that was good to go apart from running away.
No.
But then you need to go back. You have to get through this area. You have to do something.
So that, in that section...
So it was just running in, either getting pinged and having to run back, or running in, getting caught, and it devolving into a big battle, which I didn't want to be in. Then me potentially having to take out the whole camp, or literally just run through it. That's not good. That for me is not good game design.
That, like, I agree with that. Like, all of the bits with the mules, the human NPCs, I didn't enjoy and basically avoided. So the section I was just describing there, that's right at the start of chapter 3, I ended up just hightailing it. I didn't even bother trying to sneak past them. I just took the furthest on the left that I could go. That it began a small, like, foothill, and I just ran along the side of that, and I got pinged, and they started chasing me, and those horrible electric javelin things that they have.
They throw at you,
they were all, raining down around me, but I just kept legging it until I was free from them.
See, to be honest, Lewis, I did the same thing. I basically did the same thing on numerous occasions. And I would love someone to let us know if we are just being bad at this game, right?
Absolutely.
But I could not stealth anything at all. Like, I could not sneak past enemies at all.
I think that's the key thing. Like, sneaking past them just wasn't really an option. Again, it's very important that you can't kill anyone in the game because of the lore within it, like the terrible things that will happen. And so you can't really ever fight them properly. You can kind of just keep yourself alive. But I have to say, like, that drives into the combat part of it for me. I basically deliberately did avoid all combat. I got into those two fights that I've kind of described there,
and
which it makes you do.
To be clear, as bad as those experiences were for me, and they were outright bad, but they were very few. Because the game doesn't want you to be in combat.
Totally,
Therefore, you are encouraged almost often to avoid these areas where you would be put in combat. But then there are missions where it directly puts you in those areas and you have to go there.
Although, again, those are relatively few. Like, so I think in total I had maybe 4 combat experiences with human characters. 2 of them went totally fine, 2 of them didn't. Like, I could make it work, but there was definitely a sense for me that I was trying to play it in a certain way which suited how I was experiencing the game. I didn't want any combat because I didn't enjoy it and because I didn't think it was kind of in keeping with the tone of the thing. But I do not disagree with you that the actual mechanics for those things is fairly bad. Just to reel back onto the combat thing again very briefly, it doesn't happen that often. I was barely firing a gun, although for a game that's you're not really allowed to kill anything, and there's a hell of a lot of weaponry you kind of amass over time.
Yeah, there is. So this was all concerning human enemies.
Yeah.
Then going on to BTs, for the vast majority of the game, you can't really kill them. You can sort of maneuver them around, for lack of a better term. But I found that stealthing through them was just ludicrously easy.
You mean just the typical BTs that are just...
Yeah, just typical BTs. Like, you just hit crouch and you just walk slowly and you got past them. That was that. They were basically a non-threat for the entirety of the game.
Although when they do get you, it's terrifying. So
when they do get you, it is terrifying. But I was got with my very first interaction with BTs, which again was early doors when I wasn't enjoying the primary game.
I was worried for you.
And I was like, man, fuck this. But quickly, as the game began to click and I began to understand the mechanics and what I was supposed to be doing, I was maybe caught twice. Outside of that, one time was kind of, in fact, not both times to be fair, was really my own stupidity, and they were easily avoidable situations, and they quite quickly became a non-threat to me.
I just think like the little ticks that the game has in those moments, like the hood automatically coming up because the timefall has begun, and that means you're closer to them. And then obviously when the Oderic scanner, you get the little cutscene where it's kind of coming out, which means they're near.
Yeah, as we kind of slow down.
And the
again,
sound design, all that
like
it's
the kinda,
so like impressively kind of horror feeling about
exactly.
it.
The visual cues around that are great. I totally agree. I actually think that the look of the BTs as an enemy is quite terrifying, but they just cease to become a threat to me. Do you know what I mean?
Totally.
Anyway, I did want to talk about that. We're kind of dragging on a bit here, as was bound to happen when we talked about Death Stranding, I suppose. But I did just want to touch on the narrative, which in general I basically found pretty disappointing. I thought that when Kojima was talking about all this connection and connecting with people, and that is the whole game basically, is just going from place to place, connecting people together. I thought that the story would have more to say around that. Basically, I thought that it would deal with the themes around connectivity and that kind of world, and which would obviously be a reflection of our world, would have more to say to me. I just thought that it would explore these themes a bit more in a more interesting way, in a more pliable way to what is actually happening in the world just now, and it really didn't. It flew off on a tangent just almost instantly and never came back. So that to me was pretty disappointing, to be honest. And also, right at the end of the game, there is, well, not right at the end of the game, actually, that's really not true, but at the end of the game, there's a huge dump of exposition, and it's hours. Like, I think it was probably about 2 hours.
It literally is. I've done it twice now. It literally is.
There you go.
Yeah.
Of just a huge amount of exposition where you as the player are doing very, very little in that 2 hours with regards to interacting with the game in an actual gameplay. And the tragic thing about that is that was quite painful to go through, but the story needed it. The story actually needed that to be even remotely comprehensible. Yeah. And that's quite disappointing. Like, I think that is really poor storytelling in a game. The point in what we're doing here, the point in gaming, and why games are such an interesting medium, is that you tell these stories through the gameplay, through your interaction with the game. Although Kojima is like famous for having long cutscenes, like when they're interspersed in the game and they're building up to something, but just to dump it like that at the end of the game was awful. I thought that was really bad, man.
I agree. I think the writing in this game is really problematic all the way through, because as you said there is this huge exposition dump at the end, but it's not like we've not had an absolute mountain of cutscenes all the way through, and including proper like cinematic ones.
Can I just say, some of which are brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, that is the thing, like they can be so dramatic in their different moments, but then he spends so much time in the game so often with characters talking to you, just repeating information, repeating parts of the story that we already know, repeating theories that people have about the Death Stranding ad nauseum. Like, we get so much of that, and then also just them explaining the game mechanics. I hate that half the time when you come up from the private room, having just been told, this is what you're going to need to do next, we need you to go to this place and collect this thing and blah blah blah, and then you'd come up from the lift, and so it's literally like 20 seconds later and you get a call on the codec where they say, remember and check the terminal to get your next mission. You're like, yeah, no, I've been playing it for 40 hours. Like, why are you wasting energy and time and cutscene space on this kind of thing when, as it turns out, it just dumps so much at the end? And the real problem for me is, I disagree to an extent that I think the actual gameplay does tell a lot of the story in terms of what you are doing here is trying to reconnect this world, and the feeling of loading up and heading out into the distance and just trying to make it there through all the terrible stuff that's going on and making those connections. That stuff works, but
can I just say it totally does?
Yeah,
right, it does.
But when you get towards the end of the game, the story takes, I think, a really significant left turn on its narrative. It feels like it's introducing things at a rate of knots that make no sense, that mean close to nothing.
But that's it. But all those things that they are introducing very rapidly and that don't mean anything, you're like, what's going on here? And well, most of it anyway is reasonably well explained in this expedition dump at the end. That's why I feel that the story needs it.
Yeah.
What I think is disappointing is why couldn't we just have told that through the gameplay?
Mm-hmm.
Why does it need to be this excruciating ending 2 hours to the game? Which the last mission that you do is within this excruciating 2 hours was one of my favourite parts of the whole fucking game. But it was just surrounded by this bullshit. Honestly, it was ridiculous.
Yeah, it totally was. Like the last few hours, they get rid of quite a lot of the goodwill that I think the player has up to that point. Really, there's sort of two narrative threads coming into that end section, and by the end of it, one of them, I was just like, that was a load of rubbish. They didn't know what they were doing with that, and I don't care about it. And then there was one thread which ties to the mission that you're talking about, really enjoying, that I think is utterly brilliant, the way that it's handled, and the way that
I could not agree more about this.
Pieces of the narrative that are scattered really fairly well scattered throughout the game. Like, it doesn't come up all that often. You kind of get it in these bits and pieces. Suddenly at the end, it's shown, to my mind at least, to actually be the real story of the game, like what we're actually about here.
It is kind of the bit less focused on.
Yeah.
But by far the best bit of the entire game. Like,
absolutely.
I totally agree. Anyway, Lewis, I reckon we should probably talk about the news.
Okay.
What a transition. All right, news item number 1. Google Stadia, Lewis. It continues to faceplant it at every possible opportunity. Borderlands 3 is now launched, which was supposed to be one of the launch titles, so far as I understand. However, the version that is on Stadia is in fact a version from October the 24th. No patch or anything that has come since then will be incorporated into this launch of Borderlands 3 on Google Stadia. Now, that's madness, because Borderlands 3 launch wasn't the roughest. I mean, it was no Anthem, let's be honest, but it had issues in the beginning. So a lot of those patches that have come since are probably fairly critical to your enjoyment of the game. So the fact that they have decided to launch this game without that is mind-blowing to me. You're just continually creating yourself terrible fucking headlines. I do not understand what they're doing here. Do they understand what they're doing?
I think they don't understand what they're doing, Mark. I mean, especially given that the whole thing about Stadia is supposed to be that, you know, all the games, they're just there, click of a button, you don't have to wait for downloads.
They don't have patches, but I never thought they didn't have patches because you want to fucking give us them. Jesus Christ. Apart from that, Stadia have also launched like a bunch of other stuff, like including their achievement system, which again was supposed to come out at launch, but just didn't. And even that comes with caveats, because you can only view your achievements on the Chromecast or on the Chrome browser. Granted, that will be how most people are playing the game, but you can't get it on a mobile browser, and you cannot get it on their own mobile app, which again is just bizarre. Like, what? Then wait.
Exactly.
Then wait. Like, is anyone like crying out for this? I mean, I understand that it was probably promised at launch because a lot of stuff was and they never delivered. But I doubt that this is really a deal breaker for anyone. Considering another caveat to this is that there is no cumulative score that goes along with your achievements. It's just an achievement you get. There's no like trophy score that you get on PlayStation or like achievement score that you get on Xbox, and these all build up and you can see if you've got more points than your friends or anything like that. Yeah. There's none of that. It's just a box ticking exercise effectively. You've launched something again that is half done, that's half baked. I do not understand why they're doing this. It's crazy to me.
It's been an absolutely shambolic rollout, as everyone is aware. As you were saying there, the thing about the achievements is if you've already missed it, don't put it out until it's done now. Like, you're not going to claim back any credibility from that. It's just been a total disaster, this whole thing.
It really has. However, a couple of good points. Let's not keep it all negative around Stadia all of the time, although they are making it difficult, to be fair. They have now launched the Buddy Pass, which is good, which is something that was also promised at launch, but this allows you, if you got the Founders Edition, to give a Buddy Pass to someone else who can then use Stadia for free for a time, I understand it. Which I actually thought initially, when it was first launched, was a great idea, had it come out when it launched.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Oh, God. It's again, everything seems to come with like a little pinch of salt, doesn't it, you know? And also that they have bought Typhoon Studios, who haven't actually released the game yet. However, they do come with some serious pedigree. They're made up from former employees from Ubisoft and EA and WB Montreal, or at least that's what their Wikipedia page says, because I had to look them up because I'd never heard of them. And they've got a game coming out, in fact, at the end of this month.
Yeah,
what's it called?
Journey to the Savage Planet.
That's it.
Yeah, which comes out in about 3 weeks, I think. Yeah,
which hilariously, the first game from this now Stadia studio will not come out on Google Stadia.
Is it not coming at all?
I don't know if it's not coming at all, but it's not launching on Google Stadia. So the first game from this studio that Google have just bought will not come out on their own fucking platform.
That's
it's
crazy.
insane.
Surely they're going to be working on porting that. Yeah,
I mean they will. Obviously they will. Obviously they will. But I don't know. It's just quite funny. I thought just in the context of this. I mean, what do you say, man?
Like, this is definitely a product in beta that has not been marketed as
Then
such.
call it that.
Yeah, and
Then
they've totally blown their chance to get any kind of credibility around this or any goodwill towards it. People are turning off in the droves. The idea of being given someone's buddy pass now, like, what are you buddying up for? I heard that the numbers of concurrent players on Destiny.
Oh, I was just going to. No, nearly 60% decrease since launch.
Well, so who's buddying up? Who wants to be in that ecosystem if there's no one around?
I really don't know. Honestly, this is quite sad to me because I ultimately think that cloud gaming is the future, basically. And I would have been interested to see if someone had done it well, just out the gate. Mm-hmm. Out the gate, I think the Xbox are fucking killing it, quite frankly. The tech seems to work at least as well as Google Stadia's, if not better. They launched in beta, as they should have done. And they're working out the kinks, but they need player testing, like real life test cases to work things out, which is what Google also needed. But they have done this sort of full launch, which I say full launch, like they are definitely implying to us that this platform of theirs has in fact launched. Mm-hmm. But to all intents and purposes, it's not. So the messaging around this is so bad. Every announcement that they make, again, either comes with a whole bunch of caveats or there's some sort of negative spin. And it's just like, do you know what it feels like, actually? I brought up Anthem like 2 seconds ago. It feels like the Anthem launch where it was just like, Christ, they cannot get a good headline to save themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
You know
it's a constant pile-on. Everyone's looking for the next gag to make about them. I just like to...
But again, it's not as if that's unjust. Mm-hmm. They are continually fucking up.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't unjust with Anthem, but it's just they really need to make a big change to get out of that. I just think it's a huge warning to everyone who thought big tech company that in theory can deliver this, like Amazon. I take Microsoft slightly differently, but everyone was saying these companies can deliver this stuff and they're going to push PlayStation out. That was the kind of chats we were having when this
that is what I thought.
Yeah,
genuinely, and I thought that in the streaming future, PlayStation are going to struggle in that world. And I still believe that, quite frankly.
But I just think it comes down to that these companies don't understand gaming, what's important to gaming and gamers.
But I don't know,
they just understand the buttons.
Phil Harrison, Jade Raymond, even people like Jared Petty, who used to be on like Kinda Funny, who I used to love on there. Like all these people know games, and all these people are fucking passionate about it as well. I just don't understand. I do not understand. Like, I have to believe that these people have not made these decisions. I have to believe that they know that this was a fucking shit show.
Phil Harrison doesn't know console launches very well, so
he doesn't. He did oversee the Xbox One launch, which was the worst Xbox launch, and he did oversee the PS3 launch, which was the worst PlayStation launch, and now he's oversaw Stadia. So I don't know, like I don't want to shit on the guy. Like I really don't know anything about him, to be completely honest. But dearie me, whatever it is, it's not went well. Alright, news item number 2. Ubisoft, Lewis, have cancelled an unannounced project which had been running for 3 years. This all came about over Twitter when a graphic programmer called Louis de Carafel, is that how we're saying that, said this.
I just learned that the project I've been working on for the past 3 years has been cancelled. This is tough news because I've been working with all these people for around 7 years, during which we've shipped both Watch Dogs and Watch Dogs 2. However, the good thing about working at Ubisoft Montreal is that nobody in the team has lost their job. Every single one of the 200 plus people in the team will be reassigned to an existing project in the studio. There's over 15 of them. We even get to choose which ones we prefer.
I mean, obviously, it's sad that his project is cancelled. It's sad that this project that had been running for 3 years is cancelled. But obviously, that's great to hear that no one gets sacked. Like, all these people are going to be relocated, put on to different projects. That's fantastic to hear. What does concern me is that this this comes off the back of Ghost Recon not performing very well. They've admitted that themselves.
And The Division, they said the
The Division, which I thought was a great game, actually. Like, it was probably one of the best live service games I've ever played, or that I certainly enjoyed the most. But the resultant disappointing performances from these games has subsequently resulted in a decision to delay a whole bunch of games, including Watch Dogs, Rainbow Six Quarantine, and Gods and Monsters, from basically Q1 2020 to yet to be confirmed date later in the year. Not only that, and I know that tweet mentions that there are 15 projects up and going, but projects that we are aware of, particularly Skull and Bones, which was announced ages ago, and I believe was supposed to come out in like summer last year, like in 2019, and we have heard nothing about that since. Beyond Good and Evil 2 is another one, just absolutely dead space, you know? All of this is sort of adding up to be a bit concerning to me. And then also I was reading today that the Rainbow Six Siege team, which has been a hugely successful property for Ubisoft, but probably outside Assassin's Creed, probably their most successful property ever. They're now moving that core team on from that project. I don't want to read into that too much. Because that could be anything really. Yeah. But I wonder if they are moving some of these people onto other projects to try and uplift them, because they don't think that the games were going to come out in such a manner that was going to be critically acclaimed and wanted to be played by a lot of people. Because right now, to me, it seems, and this is my real concern, and we were talking about this, and I know you think I'm about daft for being concerned about Ubisoft, right? I know that you do, but my real concern is that Ubisoft right now clearly aren't making good money, or not as much as they should be making, right? And Ubisoft have a lot of valuable IP, mainly the Tom Clancy name and Assassin's Creed are by far the two biggest. That combination of things, of not making money and having very valuable IP, is a fast fucking way to get bought.
Yeah.
And I'm very, very scared that their newfound great relationship with Google Stadia means that Google might be eyeing them up, quite frankly. And if they buy Ubisoft, that is the end of Ubisoft.
Well, because Google will run them into the ground.
Because Google will make it exclusive to their platform that no one will play.
Well, yeah, I think, first of all, like, that's unlikely to happen. I imagine.
That is my wild speculation of the day, ladies and gentlemen. But I'm worried for Ubisoft, genuinely.
I think there's some reasons to be concerned within that. Certainly, like, the Ghost Recon kind of bomb has hurt them. But I just don't think it's enough to really drag a studio like that down.
Well, it's not. Can I just say, I'm not saying that they're going to go under or anything like that. I'm just saying that if someone slaps a big pile of money on their table and says, well, we'll give you this, then...
For sure, but that could happen at any time. You know?
It could, and look, if it were Google have the power to buy anyone at anything. Like, they absolutely do. They could simply make Ubisoft an offer they can't refuse, and that would be that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But I don't know if Google are that kind of... Google do smart business. Do you know what I mean? Right, despite what we were just...
Yeah, like badly launching a platform.
well, they're one of the richest companies in the world. They didn't get there by accident.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I just, like, take even that as an example. Like, I don't think you're wrong necessarily, but I think, like, Google could have bought Ubisoft at the height of that partnership 2 years ago when they were at
their most expensive.
Yeah, well,
when their share price was through the fucking roof. So now it's in the toilet.
Yeah, now
that's why it's a good opportunity for you to buy them.
Maybe so. Although if all their IP isn't going anywhere, nowhere, and buying their games, but
it's valuable IP. It's IP that can be made better again. Like, Assassin's Creed is a huge franchise. Like, the Tom Clancy name attached to any game is a big deal.
Well, yeah, potentially, but if, like, you say that, but Ghost Recon is a Tom Clancy game and it didn't sell well, and neither did The Division, which is a Tom Clancy game. So my point being that the IP is one thing, but you need the developers and you need the ideas behind them. And so Google can afford to buy them, could have bought them and made them their first party studio right in the beginning. I'm not saying that any of that's going to happen, but I just think, read the sign slightly differently. I think the moving the core team on from Rainbow Six could actually, like, there's a core team under them who've been working on that game alongside them for a long time.
I'm not suggesting that Rainbow Six is in any sort of
no, absolutely not.
I can't remember the guy's name, but it's a totally veteran guy who's taken over. I think that they are more than good fans. It's more interesting to know where those people are going.
Exactly, and you said a really interesting thing on the sort of 2020 chat we did last week, talking about FPSs and how Xbox got really stuck with all their major IP being FPSs, and the kind of the console generation moved on from that, right? I think that Ubisoft is probably looking at that as well. Like, they have fundamentally altered Assassin's Creed, what that game is, because the times have changed. And I wouldn't be stunned if they were making that core team behind Rainbow Six look at what their next gen offer is going to be. What is it that in the PS5, Xbox Series X era what is a Ubisoft game going to be at that point? And I wouldn't be surprised if they're going, you guys have made this incredibly and kind of surprisingly successful game.
Well, it wasn't successful out of the gate.
No, it wasn't exactly, and they turned it around. So they're probably like, we want a big service game in the future. What's that going to be? I just think I totally get, and the delays are a problem. But say if Gods and Monsters comes out and it's like a really passable Zelda clone, and if Watch Dogs comes out, and even if it doesn't do exactly what they've kind of promised they can, if it's still a good, fun, enjoyable game, and then they announce a new brilliant looking Assassin's Creed, you're talking about them being Studio of the Year again. You know what I mean?
Okay, I would love to be proven wrong.
Yeah.
I would absolutely love to be proven wrong. All right, news item number 3. Vince Zampella, boss of Respawn, is going to be taking over EA's DICE LA studio. Now, Vince Zampella, right? You might not know this person's name, but I can guarantee you that you know the games that they've worked on. Vince Zampella, along with a guy called Jason West, started Infinity Ward. And if you don't know who Infinity Ward, well, where have you been for the last 20 years? But Infinity Ward started the Call of Duty franchise, or certainly made it into what it was. They were responsible for Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, and then Modern Warfare 2 after that, which completely revolutionised online shooters. They were then treated abhorrently by Activision, to the point that they were fired to save Activision money. And then they started their own studio, which is a little known studio called Respawn Studios, which subsequently went on to launch the Titanfall series, Titanfall 1 and Titanfall 2, which are arguably two of the best story-driven shooters, the best narratives in any shooter that's been in a very, very long time. And more recently, Apex Legends and Jedi Fallen Order, after they got bought by EA. So, hell of a track record, I would say. Hell of a track record. And I think that of 2019, if there was a Studio of the Year award, I think it would be difficult to give it to anyone other than Respawn, coming out with Apex Legends and Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order in the same fucking year. I don't even know how you do that, to be honest, but they have an absolutely fantastic track record, and so does Vince Zampella. Absolutely tremendous. It's worth pointing out that the DICE LA is not the DICE that make Battlefield and Battlefront. That is DICE Stockholm. DICE LA actually used to be called EA Los Angeles, who were responsible for the Medal of Honor franchise back in the day, but in their current iteration of being DICE LA, they are basically just a support studio for DICE Stockholm and other studios in EA's network. However, it looks as if they're going to be going through a bit of a rebranding as well. Now that Vince Zampella is in charge, they're going to become their own studio, and they're going to start making games, and I think that's really fucking exciting.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that is the key message to come out of it, that they're saying we are going to be making games now as this studio. It sounds like, from what Vince is saying, that they're trying to recruit, so it's going to grow bigger. What do you think that's going to be? What are they working on there?
I don't know. I'm interested because Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, obviously they were handed this enormous IP with Star Wars, right? And it was a fantastic game, which I'm sure had time constraints that were insane. Mm-hmm. However, as their first attempt at a platform melee game, that was a tremendous game for that. I mean, these guys have been FPS focused their entire careers, basically. Mm-hmm. So what I'd really love to see, to be honest with you, is that Respawn just keep doing what Respawn are doing. Keep on doing your Apex Legends. Maybe we get another Titanfall in the future. Who knows? One can dream. Yeah. And they just keep focusing on that and doing that. That'll be great, and that's all good. And then Vince over here can be doing, maybe we're trying a couple of narrative things, you know what I mean? Maybe we're trying to do something a wee bit different. Maybe we're trying to look at platformers, or look at doing the new Star Wars game or whatever. Like, you don't know what they're going to be handed, you know? Yeah. EA have a huge amount of properties in their backlog there, you know what I mean? They could be given anything. They could do something entirely new, do you know what I mean?
Could do something.
EA seem a bit too risk averse for that, but apart from
that is the thing. I mean, EA love their old IPs. I wouldn't be stunned if this is Medal of Honor again.
I kind of would. I think that Medal of Honor is past that, do you know what I mean? It's what we were talking about last week with what we were talking about with 360, and like the focus just always been on first person shooters.
Yeah.
First person shooters. I don't know, like maybe you can. I mean, I would trust them to do something interesting with it.
I think that's the thing.
But I hope that they don't, to be honest. I really hope that they do something cool and new.
Yeah, that's not EA's mode of being.
That certainly is not, no.
I just think there is like a Medal of Honor VR game coming, and that just seems perfect. So Vince Zampella is still staying on at Respawn.
I should have said that.
It feels like he can bring on the knowledge of story-driven first-person shooter games to them.
But then EA have got to see, the reason why I don't think this is going to happen is because EA are then going to have their main big franchises that are kind of year on year on year, apart from the sports stuff, is going to be Battlefield, Battlefront, Apex Legends, and then Medal of Honor, which are all first-person shooters. No, that's not. Battlefront's a third-person shooter, but they're all shooters.
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
I don't know. Do you not want to diversify? I mean, surely even EA can see you might want to diversify a wee bit.
I think you have to keep reminding yourself about EA, Mark.
All right, news item number 4. Alienware, makers of very high-end gaming PCs, are making a handheld gaming device called the UFO, which is 100% loose. A rip-off of the Nintendo Switch. To the point that it has Joy-Cons that can be taken off of the handheld console and put into a grip. That grip can be held up with a kickstand. That grip can be attached to a TV and or monitor. It doesn't need a dock, which is a nice touch. However, the specs are a bit up from the Switch, I will say. The display is going to be 1200p, 60 frames per second, or it can manage that at least, whereas the Nintendo Switch is 720p, 30 frames per second, so there's quite a significant upgrade from that. This device will support mouse and keyboard, but more to the point, it will run a full version of Windows 10, to the point that you will also be able to get out your Excel spreadsheets and play Minesweeper. So yeah, exciting stuff. I've got to say, like, this is a blatant rip-off of the Nintendo Switch. For me, there is no denying that at all. Mm-hmm. I still think that this is interesting, like a handheld gaming PC. To be honest with you, I am someone who, for various reasons, I have a Mac, right? And a Mac's great for doing things like recording and editing podcasts. It's superb at that. However, what it's garbage at is playing fucking games.
Yeah.
So I have been looking at getting maybe a cheap gaming PC, like over maybe the last few years that I've not really overly committed to and whatever. And then I've looked at building PCs and that looks like a faff. And I'm just thinking, like, if there was just a device like that, like a Nintendo Switch style device that I could pay for, that would just run any PC game that I ever wanted to play, and then that was that. I'm quite interested in that in reality.
I mean, I don't deny any of that. I think you're right to be interested in it, and it fully is like a Switch killer in theory. And in theory,
well, it's not, because they've got all those sweet IPs.
Yeah, well, that is the key thing. But like in theory here, though, is important because this is still a prototype.
This is a prototype. They were very keen to point out that this was a prototype.
Still essentially in concept. That isn't definitely coming to market at any point.
No,
although it seems
it might not even look the way that it looks. The specs might not be the specs that it ends up with.
And that's the other thing. They haven't really talked about the hardware properly, so we don't know with any certainty what it is flying under the hood. That's the deal breaker, because
one thing that I heard was that it got very hot.
Yeah, it's when the video that we watched about it said it has got 2 hours battery life. I've just read that it's also 3 times heavier than the Switch. Yeah, which is fairly significant.
I mean, yeah, again, for a handheld thing, you would. That might not sound like a lot, but you would notice that.
Yeah, you would absolutely notice it. And so, again, all in prototype, so all of those things can be tightened up. But in effect, it's a seemingly high-powered tablet with 2 controllers on either side that can be used for kind of other things.
Sort of, kind of.
Yeah, and that's fine.
I mean, it doesn't run out like a tablet OS, like, though. It runs full Windows 10.
Yeah. Well, we'll see again. But I just think like Alienware stuff is notoriously expensive, often as all kind of gaming PC stuff is.
Well, pre-built gaming PCs, particularly ones that like Alienware that have a bit of badge going on, tend to be quite inflated.
So this is probably going to be the same. And so I just, again, would counter all of that with like, if the Switch is pretty cheap, it's doing more or less the same thing. You might have to wait a year or 2 for some of the games.
Well, it's not playing the high-end stuff.
It's not.
That's what it's doing. Yeah, I don't know. I just thought it was interesting.
Yeah, keep an eye on it.
Yeah, definitely something to keep an eye on. If it comes out at 500 quid or something like that, they've totally fucked it, obviously. But if it's in the 300 quid ish range,
that could be interesting.
I think a lot of people would be interested.
Yeah.
All right, just finishing off with a couple of shout outs. First off, free games. On PS Plus this month, you're getting the Uncharted collection and Goat Simulator. Pretty good there, pretty good. And the Xbox games with gold, you're getting Styx, Shadow of Darkness, and the Batman Telltale series. So yeah, relatively good. The Batman Telltale series is actually thought was surprisingly good.
Yeah, I never got to it.
Yeah. And the Uncharted collection, like, obviously, absolute classic. Make sure you get that if you're on PlayStation. All right, shout out number 2. The PlayStation 5 logo has been revealed, Lewis. It has been revealed, and it looks exactly fucking like you would expect it to look.
Yeah.
It looks exactly like the PS4 logo and the PS3 logo, but it says 5 instead of 3 and 4.
Yeah.
It's exactly the same.
It's the PS2 logo with the 2 reversed, basically, does it?
Also, over the break, PlayStation released this odd back button thing, the attachment for your DualShock 4, which this is such an odd time to be releasing new hardware. But it's interesting because we also know that the patent for the DualShock 5 has programmable buttons in the back. So I don't know if it's just kind of priming us for that, or perhaps if you want to take your DualShock 4 onto the next console and it is backwards compatible, then you can still have those back buttons.
Yeah, maybe.
It's actually a pretty good price as well. I think it was like 30 quid or something, and it's coming out on the 14th of February if you're particularly interested in that. Shout out number 3, IGN Lewis, one of the biggest reviewers in all of video games, is changing their point system. They're going from a 100-point system down to a 10-point system, which means that you're not going to get a 9.3, you're just going to get a 9 or a 7 or an 8. They'll just all be flat. So I would get ready for a lot of 7s, 8s and 9s from them because anything worth playing, or 90% of the things worth playing, I'm sure will fall in that bracket.
Pretty much, yeah. It's going to really take away some of the nuances of scoring. But
yeah, to be honest with you, I'm conflicted about this. I'm not really sure how I feel about this. I kind of think that you either go all in with a 100-point system or you do nothing at all.
Yeah.
That's sort of how I feel about it. This kind of feels like a bit of an odd half step, but anyway, we'll leave that for another day. Shout out number 4, Brendan Green, otherwise known as PlayerUnknown. His new game Prologue, that was first shown off at the Game Awards just before Christmas, will not be a sequel to PUBG, and it will not even be a shooter at all. And apparently his quote from the statement that he was making was that he wants to deliver something on a global scale, and it seems to be very much implying that he wants to do like something on a big scale, something with a lot of players in the world all at once. I also remember there being hints that the current tech isn't capable of it or something like that, and I was like, all right, okay, so this is clearly an extra thing. Yeah, that was really subtle there, Brendan. I don't know, like I continue to be interested in this. Like I think Brendan Green's got a pretty good track record in reality, so I'll be interested to see what he does next. Shout out number 5, Apple Arcade Loose, your favourite, is launching a yearly subscription model where you can pay 50 quid or $50 or €50 for the year rather than paying it up on a monthly basis, which I think was a $5.
A $5, yeah.
Yeah, $5 a month. So I think you save yourself was that $10 over the year?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so essentially
quick maths,
2 months subscription free, which is cool.
Is that something you'd be interested in?
I think it's nice that they're doing it. I wouldn't notice a $5 leaving my account. I would notice 50 quid, so I don't mind paying it, even though it will cost me slightly more.
Yeah, in the long run.
Yeah, but it gets the money in for them, so fair enough.
Yeah, it's still a great service. I have to admit, I have to come clean. I did cancel my thing the month after I paid for it, because in the month that I actually paid for it, I didn't play anything.
I haven't played anything in months, but I've still paid for it every time.
Oh, that's good. But I would be more than happy to go back to it just to finish What's the Golf. I am determined to finish that at some point in my life. All right, now going quickfire list. We're going quickfire because we're heavily running out of time, and this is going to be a long one. Shout out number 6, GTA 5 will now be available on Xbox Game Pass, which is a huge get for them, I would have thought. Game Pass just continuing to be the best deal in video gaming, quite frankly. Yeah, Microsoft are really killing it over there with that. Shout out number 7, Obsidian have confirmed that The Outer Worlds will be getting DLC coming in 2020. It wasn't confirmed whether or not it will be free. However, I strongly suspect that it probably will. However, the studio is now being bought by Xbox and Microsoft, so I just hope that this DLC is available to everyone and not just Xbox and Microsoft. Even maybe they get it a wee bit earlier, but not.
They
not
get it free and we have to pay.
Oh God, I hope that'd be horrible, wouldn't it? Okay, shout out number 8. Luigi's Mansion 3 is also getting DLC. Lewis's favourite game he's never played. The first part will come out in April the 30th. The second part will come out in July the 31st. This is not free, and will have to be bought in a bundle from the eShop for $10. I could not find how much it cost in pounds. I imagine it'll be between £8 and £10. To be honest with you. It'll be in that price range. Shout out number 9. Yes, we've got a lot. There was a lot to catch up on. Final Fantasy VII Remake demo has leaked. Me and Lois have steered well clear of it. I strongly recommend that you also steer clear of it unless you want any of the game spoiled for you, but there is a leak out there. Just be aware of that. Shout out number 10. Fortnite has added a split screen mode to Xbox One and PlayStation 4. This is something I think all shooters should have from day one, quite frankly. But really good to see that Fortnite are doing it. Hopefully that means other people will follow suit. I miss that. I miss the old couch co-op shooters. Yeah, they were awesome.
Bring them back.
Absolutely. And that's us, Lewis. We're finished. And you know what it's time for? It's time for a beer. And we are back with Topic of the Week. Topic of the Week this week is our play-along of Inside. I'm very excited to talk about this. I hadn't played Inside in a very, very long time. And you hadn't played it at all. And in fact, I believe you only finished it yesterday.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Yeah, I hadn't ever played it. I had seen the ending, which is... I thought it was going to be more problematic for my playthrough than it ended up being. So there is a really major thing that happens at the end. It's kind of super important.
We're spoiling this, man.
Okay.
Say what it is.
Okay, yeah. So
by the way, spoilers galore. We're doing a playthrough of Inside.
So
continue.
Yeah. So basically, I
Yes,
had
the giant human meatball.
yeah, the crazy kind of huddle thing of a massive bodies. I had seen essentially the last like 30 minutes of the game being played just at a friend's place just after it came out. Couldn't do anything about seeing it, so I did go into this thinking, God, like I need to play all the way through this. I already know how it's going to pan out, and my God, I loved this. I absolutely loved playing this game.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you liked it, man. To be honest with you, it was never in doubt for me.
No.
I knew it's an absolutely fantastic game. There is no doubt about this. To be honest with you, again, with a lot of these games that we do on this, we're obviously picking games that we like, that we really enjoy, and most of which at least one of us have played before, or if not, then we're both very interested in playing it. There's very little doubt in my mind that you were going to like this, but I'd very much like to hear from anyone who didn't.
Yeah.
Because I'd be like, why?
Absolutely.
It'd be really fascinating, I think, to know why someone didn't like this game.
I can only imagine the only like downsides to it are like its length. If you think that that's a problem in a game, I don't think it's a problem at all.
No, absolutely not.
And just that it's kind of tense and awful in places. And
yeah,
that
it really is tense and awful. It's very bleak in
Yeah.
general. The world that it's set in, similarly to Limbo. So I suppose we should probably introduce the game, shouldn't we, Lewis? So this again is by Playdead, which is the same developer that made Limbo, which was our play-along game for last month. And these two games are even often sold together. Like Inside is very much the spiritual successor to Limbo. It feels very similar in a lot of ways mechanically, but visually is quite a lot more developed than Limbo, because Limbo was just the black and white, which was a fantastic aesthetically. I'm not trying to take away from it, but this has clearly had more time and money available to it than Limbo did. Yeah, so I'd be really interested to hear what you think then, I guess.
Yeah, I just went into this expecting kind of more of the same from Limbo, and in a lot of ways it is more of the same.
It starts almost identically,
so it's difficult not to just make comparisons to Limbo, right? I thought this was
I'd like to do that as well.
Yeah.
Like I think that there is a lot of interesting conversation to be had on that, but let's talk about the game itself.
Yeah, so I think it's got really a phenomenal atmosphere,
absolutely incredible,
a deeper sense of tension and eeriness than Limbo had in certain ways, because I kind of was putting this dichotomy together in my head, and I was like, the thing with Limbo is that it's got a kind of like gothic-y fairy tale horror to it. It's unsettling because of things like the spider chasing you and the black and white visuals and not being able to properly see everything. But I think a lot of that's kind of lost towards the end of Limbo, where you enter a more urban space, and some of that, it just doesn't feel like it knows exactly where it's going there. Inside, to me, felt so tight on its concept. It's so kind of visceral. I think it's really interesting even that the game begins and it feels like you're escaping, because within seconds...
Well, you are.
Yeah, well...
It literally begins with you escaping.
Well,
that is what it is.
Sort of, though, right? Because it starts with you coming down this hill, there's the policemen or the dogs, the security guards, whatever they are, and the dogs are running at you, and it's terrifying, and you're like...
So, sorry, you are escaping them.
Yeah.
To be clear, you're not like escaping overall.
The mood of it and what's happening there made me think that is what's going on. Like, we're escaping from something here, right? And it's kind of the same as with Limbo.
Yeah,
like,
you're being chased for whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And you're moving from left to right almost all the time. Yeah, certainly the early portions of
very similar to Limbo.
Yeah, and it's like I'm just trying to get away from whatever's behind me. And in reality, by the end of the game, I'm not certain that the whole time we were escaping from anything. I think we were trying to get literally inside the thing.
We had a goal.
Yeah.
We did have a goal. Again, so similarly to Limbo, and again, Limbo is going to come up a lot. I really hope that you guys listening to this played Limbo as well. It is such an incredible game as well. And talking about these two games together is so good. Like, I'm so excited for it. But similarly to Limbo, there is no dialogue at all. There's no tutorial at all. No. You're just dropped into the game. Again, very similar to Limbo, and you start moving to the right.
Yeah,
it's so incredibly good what Playdead achieve while doing that with no direct interaction with the player. You know, it's just this silent, often very isolated world. Again, very similar to Limbo, but at certain points in this game, there are actually quite a lot of other characters, which is completely unlike Limbo.
Totally,
and that both lends itself very well to the puzzles, as well as give you like enemies, which Limbo didn't really have. I mean, apart from the big spider, and there was like a few at the beginning of the game, but I mean, ultimately there was no one. It was you and yourself versus the environment.
Exactly, it was all environmental, and so much of this game is environmental. But like you say, those moments where the humans, they come scuttling out so quickly to grab you, that it is so tense in those moments. It's really horrifying.
The dogs, yeah. Oh, good lord.
But having said that, like in comparison back to Limbo, I don't think this is actually as strong in terms of its puzzles. I think that it's...
I completely agree.
Yeah, I think...
Limbo's a more difficult game.
It definitely is, right? And
you die a lot more.
I wonder if that's like that Playdead just had... it's like the difficult second album syndrome, right? You go into your first game and you've got all these ideas for how to make it interesting environmental puzzles, and you put them all there, and a couple of years later you have to follow that up with something. I think what it does do... Just to let me finish that point.
No.
Like, what it does do is it injects pace into the game. Going through Limbo, quite often you're kind of standing around going, what's there? Okay, there's that thing and there's this thing. I'm probably supposed to do this. I'll give that a try. Inside, I felt like I was almost constantly holding the stick to the right. It was just like, go. You'll work it out when you get there. Like, you've got a couple of seconds to react.
It's more dynamic.
Totally.
Way,
and it's just...
I totally understand that,
like,
actually. That's a great point.
There's one section I remember, you come out of a pool of water and there's a ramp coming down and a dog comes running towards you, but if you go too quickly to the right, he comes down a different ramp and he gets you really quickly, and so it starts making you go, because you have the whole time been going, look, I've got to go right, you start to go, actually that's making this thing happen, so I've got to climb this fence and wait there and draw him around, and it starts to introduce repetition against the pace, and suddenly every challenge becomes a slightly different thing, because you're like, it's asking me to play in a slightly different way than I was before. It's not just standing still and kind of going, okay, I pull this thing and this thing rises or whatever. It's like, shit, all this stuff is happening at once. I have to very quickly work out what it is I'm supposed to do to get beyond it, while horrible things chase you.
Yeah. I thought that the demon children in the water were quite legitimately quite terrifying. Were amazing. Ultimately, they kind of semi-turned out to be good people.
Not sure what the hell was going on there. Yeah, but
well, this is the whole thing. Like, I don't know if we want to get into speculation about the end, but my thoughts on it are basically the same thoughts as a YouTuber called Max the Rat. I watched his videos on the story explanation, or like a story analysis, and what he was trying to infer. What the story was trying to infer to us. And I thought he did a really great job of like analysing like all this stuff going on in the background and whatever, and how the giant human meatball was actually controlling the player the whole time, because there's this alternative ending where there's all these wee orbs, these wee control orbs that you can break throughout the game, and if you get all of them and then you go back to a certain bit in the cornfield, I believe, which is very early on actually, it was one of the first areas you kind of come to, then you can get a second in where you effectively just pull the plug on this whole mind control system, which is being used in this dystopian world to control all these different people for reasons unknown to the player, but we just intuitively know that it's bad. You just pull the plug on all of it, and then your wee character just droops over as if he was one of those droids, and then that's just the game ends, and that's that. And I just think that was so interesting to think about as the true ending, whereby the way that he explained it was that it was like, was it like the computer in war games is like the only winning move is not to play kind of thing, and it's just to like fucking end it all, whereas before it was going through this cyclical thing whereby it was saved and then we do all this again and then we do all this again. So that area where the demon children are underwater, it looks like that was like a previous room, a previous area where one of the human meatballs potentially was. It's a bit unclear about what these flying demon things are, maybe failed experiments or whatever. It was just a truly tremendous analysis of it, I thought, and it really played with a lot of the things that I was thinking about the game as well. He just put it very beautifully, quite honestly.
I mean, I guess I didn't read any of it as quite as literally as that, although I had heard and subsequently I've kind of read a little bit around the idea that either the huddle is controlling you or that the scientists are controlling you or whatever. But to me it just felt, and I could be totally off the mark,
to me it's clear. I always kind of thought that the meatball was controlling you.
I don't know. There's not a lot within the game that would make you say that. I guess, like you say, all the kind of
it's
cross-textual
it's the end. It's when you become the meatball.
Yeah, but why
you're absorbed into the meatball, and then the meatball breaks free. It was all to get free. Yeah, it was all for that release.
Maybe so. Yeah. I guess
the game totally changes at that point as well, which is totally
I want to come to that really quickly. Just to finish my point, there was just it feels to me like a big point potentially a big point just about the industrial complex and the way that we are dehumanized and made to behave like those zombie droid people are, and eventually society wants you to become this amorphous blob that it can control and do whatever it wants with, and that you're
that's
kind
a
of
great
breaking out of that.
Do you know that's what I love about these games?
Yeah,
like this and Limbo. It's so open to interpretation, and you can infer so much from it.
I absolutely loved it. I think just as you mentioned there, playing as the Huddle at the end of the game feels unlike anything really that you've done in games before.
No, that was fairly wild.
It's strange. The controls change ever so slightly, and your ability to interact with the world is different because you're now this amorphous blob. That was the part I'd already seen, and I loved actually being on the sticks on that. I thought it felt so good, and working out some of those puzzles as that thing was brilliant. King Lizard on our Instagram said that this is his favourite indie game ever, and
oh wow,
I don't know if I
think this is probably a lot of people's favourite.
I wouldn't go that far necessarily, but I really was not expecting to love it quite as much as I did. I thought it was a piece of total class as a video game.
It really was. It's kind of difficult to say anything other than this is a really really good game. You should play this really really good game. As I said, the sort of abstract nature of these games is just great, and what you as the player are forced to think about by going through these experiences, to me, is just great. It's just absolutely great. It's just so what video games can be and what they can do as someone who's experienced in them. And I think Limbo is just an absolutely crowning example of, sorry, I said Limbo there, didn't I? Limbo and Inside, my apologies, are both like crowning examples of ways that playing games forces you to think about the world, things, feel your feelings, man. Feel your feelings. You know what I mean? And have some thoughts about the world, you know? The last thing that remains to be said, I suppose, before we wrap up, is our game for January, Lewis. Now, we are kind of 2 weeks into January, so it's a bit bullshit to set a play along at this point. I'm kind of fully aware of that. So we are intentionally choosing a short game here, and that game is Ape Out. Now, this game, it kind of varies quite a lot, I think, from the previous games that we've looked at. This is a game that neither me and Lewis have played as well, which I think is the first one that neither of us have played. But it is very interesting in different ways. It's very interesting in what it does with the music versus what it does with its mechanics. So it's more interesting on a technical level than it is on a sort of an emotional level from what the previous games have done.
We'll see.
Even like Braid and whatever. Maybe it is. Maybe I'm selling it short. But it's a game that we've both been interested in playing basically since it came out. Yeah. Neither of us have really got round to it, and this is, quite frankly, an awesome opportunity on what will be a short month for our play-along game. So that will be our play-along game for January, the first podcast in February. We will talk about that. And I really hope that everyone can play along. But in the meantime, you can find PlayersToo on all the social media. That's Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, the lot. You can also find our written content over at PlayersToo.com. That's PlayerSToo.com. And again, if you could take 5 seconds to give us 5 stars over on Apple Podcasts, that it really, really does mean so much to us, and it really does help us out more than we can properly say here. We don't understand how Apple's algorithm works, but all we know is that if you give us a 5-star review, then it really, really helps us out. And thank you again so much to anyone that's already done that for us. Again, it really does mean a huge amount. Again, our play-along game for January will be Ape Out, which I'm actually very much looking forward to. It looks so cool. Devolver digital game, and they are always mad. So exactly, I'm always excited to get stuck into one of their games. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll catch you next week.
Thanks.